Okay, this is a quick, down and dirty way of explaining your thrust bearing inside your engine. In this particular case, this is just an example. There's nothing that's specific for every engine. Every engine's different. So I just kind of threw this together to kind of show you guys what's going on. So in this schematic, we'll start from the top. This is what the top of your main cap is going to look like. And these little edges right here are going to be your thrust bearing. And what the thrust bearing in general is it's a bearing that controls your forward and backwards movement of your crankshaft. And that's important because you don't want it to go too far forward, you don't want it to go too far back, but you also don't want it to stay right in place. So the thrust bearing just kind of limits how far forward and backwards your crankshaft is going to travel. So in here, the top, this is your top main cap. These two right here are your thrust bearing. This is just a top view of it. This is what the side of it's going to look like. It's broken up into sections, and it has like a brass bronze type of material on the outside. So that way it eats up the main cap, eats up the thrust bearing, and it doesn't eat up the main cap when your crankshaft is rotating, moving forward and backwards. It's going to eat up this before it eats up your main cap, which is very important. This is kind of just a general description, or a picture, I should say, of a engine on the inside. The checkered lines right here is your crankshaft itself. This right here is your vibration damper up front. And then you have your main cap, main cap, main cap, main cap. Again, you could have 5, you could have 4, you can have how many ever main caps your engine has. It just depends. So in here, these are just kind of like your counterweights that are slinging around that I have here. You'll also have your journals too for your connecting rods. But basically the important part, at least in my engine right here, is your thrust main cap, which is in the back right here. So in the red right here, this is the distance between your counterweight of your crankshaft and the thrust bearing. This is the important part. This is what we're going to measure here in a minute. But basically, in between, we'll say your thrust or your counterweights right here. Here's your main cap, and on these edges right here that I'm going to point out right here, this is where your thrust bearing is. This is where this part. What we're going to do right here is we're going to take a dial indicator, and we're going to set it on the truck somehow, some way, or the engine. And what we're going to do is we're going to move the crankshaft back and forth with a screwdriver, either on the flywheel or the vibration damper up front. And what that's going to do is that's going to show us the forward and backwards movement of the crankshaft. That'll give us an idea of if this thrust bearing is eaten up or not. I remember when I set up this engine, when I built it, I believe it was between 6 to 7 thousandths of end play. So we're going to see, when I put it on there with a screwdriver, we're going to see how far forwards and backwards it moves. And again, that's represented by our reds right here. So it should just glide right up on here. Another thing, if you were doing this at home, because this actually wouldn't be a bad idea for anybody to check if your transmission's out of your engine, one way you could check it, like I said, we're either going to go on the front of the engine and we're going to measure off here, or we're going to go off and measure off the flywheel. I took my serpentine belt off because I didn't want the belt to be pulling back on here. It'll probably give me an inaccurate reading if I did something like that. So if you have a serpentine belt set up or a V-belt set up, just take those off, and it'll give you a better reading if you're looking at it. Instead of trying to put pressure on it, then it's going to fling right back. It could do that. It might not do it. I don't know. I'd rather not fight with it, and it takes me not even 30 seconds to take that belt off on this setup. So we're going to get our magnetic base dial indicator hooked up, and I'll meet you guys down. All right, so kind of a unorthodox setup here. Really what you want to do is you want to have your magnetic base, your dial indicator on something solid on the engine, and then you want your plunger right here to be on your flywheel or your crank or something like that. But I don't really have the room to do that. So what we're going to do, and I haven't checked this yet, so you're going to be first checking it with me. I have this on my flywheel. When I move my flywheel, I'm going to make sure I stay over here, because if I try to pry over here, I'm probably going to get an inaccurate reading on my dial display. So I'm going to try to pry from over here when I move it forward and backwards. So I have it on my block. It's kind of as straight as I can really get it right now. So I'm going to turn this dial to where it's 0. And depending on where the crank's at right now, like I said, I haven't moved anything, so I really don't know where it's at. I'm going to pull on my plunger right here. I'm just going to make sure that every time it hits it, it's kind of in the same exact spot. And that'll tell me if it changes. That tells me that my base isn't really in a sturdy position. So just going to move this. It can really be anywhere. This is just a reference. Where it goes to, it does not matter. It just matters where it moves one way or the other. So I got that right there. I'm going to take my screwdriver and I'm going to find on my block back here. I'm going to pry it this way, and then I'll probably just use my hand to push it back the other way. But one way or the other, it'll move. So I'm going to get this kind of squared up in there. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move it backwards, see if it moves at all. Nope. And what you're seeing right there, you're seeing that flexing. That is the flywheel actually moving with me pressing it, which is a reason why you really shouldn't be doing this, especially if you're building it. If I'm checking it, I'm going to say it's probably okay, but we're going to do this. So I'm going to push the crank forward. And there we go. We got about 9 thousandths. I think I set this up again with 6 to 7. So we've lost about, 2 to 3, which I don't think that's bad. It's probably not, I wouldn't say it's good after not making really any passes with it, but we'll go ahead and I'll pry this back and see where it lands at. Again, we're back at 0 roughly. I'm going to move this back here. So, yeah, we're about 9 to 10 thousandths on this. So, still not good with what the oil looks like. I'm still not happy with it. So, it looks like it's really September anyway. So, it's end of the season. Might as well get this thing ripped out. And take the pan off, see what the bearings look like, really what the thrust bearing looks like, and we'll see if anything has really got heated or hot. If anything, you're going to see it on that thrust bearing. I would drop the pan right here and actually pull the main cap off if I didn't have this stupid oil cooler right here, which you kind of have to have, because this is the oil cooler, obviously, and it has plugs that go into here. When I take the engine out and flip it over, you guys will be able to see what it looks like. But I physically cannot pull this pan without pulling this out. And these tubes that go inside right here are your feed and return. And there's just, as you can see, there's no way I can pull this out. So what might end up happening is, I don't know, if I might see if I can probably plug these on the inside. Maybe these feeds, because they don't really do anything. If I could plug these into the pan or the pump somehow, and maybe just do weep holes or something, and then this will just be a shell and I can just cut this off. Or the Billet Specialties, I think, or not Billet Specialties, but another company builds a block off plate for that, so I might end up getting that. But next up, I'm gonna cut the filter, see what the filter looks like just to see it, and then that pretty much sums it up for this. It ate a little bit off the thrust bearing, a little bit more than I would expect, but we'll get this thing out, look at everything, and figure out what the next move is. So, all right, well, thank you guys for watching, and keep you guys updated.